welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you have joined me, and I am so glad to have Amanda Perry. Many of you who watch this channel know her and love her, and I'm so glad that she is with me today. So do you just want to say hi?
Yes, I'm happy to be on the episode this week.
Yeah.
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 I love this. When she asked me, I secretly told her I did want to be on one of the episodes at least. So I was very happy that she asked me.
What a lot of people don't know is back in the day, our church had a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Was it called a podcast?
It was a podcast.
I mean, the whole shebang, the microphones. And a couple times, Amanda and I were allowed to be
together.
Yes.
And it was wonderful.
Oh my goodness. So fun. And oh yeah, we just love all this kind of stuff.
And then we made announcements together sometimes.
Our video announcements. So yeah, so we're real comfortable and we sing together all the time at church. So this should be a whole lot of fun tonight.
Yes.
So our topic is more of a serious topic. We're going to talk about grief. And Amanda has experienced that. She lost her dad. Almost 4 years ago, I lost my mom, which I was just thinking about that today, and I can't believe it has been almost 4 years that my mom has been gone. So several people in our church, grief has touched everyone's life. So I just thought it was time for us to do a video on it because everyone grieves differently.
Right.
We all don't show it the same way. We don't process it the same way, and that's okay. It's okay that you grieve differently from someone else. Matter of fact, Lisa and I have had this conversation a lot, Lisa Leese, that she is comforted. Going to her mom's grave brings her comfort. I have a really hard time going to my mom's grave. It doesn't bring me comfort. It hurts.
Yeah.
But am I a horrible daughter because I don't go often to visit my mom? No, because my mom is in heaven.
Right.
Things like that, you know. So how we're going to start this out is I'm just going to have Amanda share her story, and then I have a few, as usual, have a few questions to ask her. So Amanda, you just share your story about grief, and you just tell us as much or as little as you feel like sharing.
Well, I'm never at a loss for words, so
me neither.
I do want to start this out by saying there is beauty in your brokenness and in your grief, even if you cannot see it.
Yes.
I was 19, and I'm not giving a sob story. I'm just telling you a little bit about the history of it.
Right.
So I was 19, and I was at Indiana Bible College studying for music, and I'd come home for the summer. It was the last week of camp, and my mom and I were cleaning up the ice cream shop. We didn't get home till about 3 a.m., and we did not even know that my dad was going to help this family cut down a tree Saturday morning. And we woke up on Saturday morning by a phone call saying Pastor Perry had been electrocuted. We did not even know he was not at home.
Oh, wow.
So it completely took us off guard. And I remember when we got in the car, my mom was sitting in the front seat and she said, "I can't drive. I need you to drive." And I said, "Okay." And of course, I was not the one that took the phone call. Sorry, I just covered my microphone up.
No, it's okay.
Okay. I was not the one who took the call. So I did not realize how severe it was.
Right.
And when we got to the accident, of course, he had already passed away. He was electrocuted. He had pastored our church for 17 years. Yeah. In my little 19-year-old mind, I had lost my dad, my best friend, my pastor, my mentor.
Right.
And I remember, so the house was out in the country surrounded by fields. And I remember that morning when we got to the scene, I was looking for my dad. I wanted to see him, which it is a good thing that I did not see him. Because it would have been devastating for me. Right. But I found one of the fields that the house was in, and I remember running out there by myself, away from everybody, and I just fell to my knees. Yes. It was absolutely the worst heartbreak. And like she said, we all face it differently.
Yeah.
The cool thing about it is the fact that when you serve the Lord, you know his hand is in it no matter what. That morning, or just happened to be that weekend, that Brother and Sister Jaco were in revival with Brother and Sister Long from Indianapolis. Now, many of you know Brother Terry Long. He was my dad's best friend.
Yeah.
And that weekend, or that morning when the accident happened, within an hour, Brother Long and Brother Jaco were at the scene of the accident, and they did not leave my mom's side the whole day.
So what a lot of people probably don't realize is that Amanda's dad was a mentor to my husband and I, and he was just a prince of, and many people say that he was a prince of men. He was. He also had part in our wedding ceremony. They drove from Indiana to St. Louis so that he could be a part of our wedding ceremony. And so we were parked on the Indiana campground, and of course got that call as well that morning. And so my husband, nothing could have kept him away because he was so precious to us as well.
Well, the Jacos were precious to our family and our church. Dad wanted them at our church as often as possible to evangelize.
We loved it.
But that morning, and this is one of the parts when I say it's just beautiful when God's hand is in it.
Yeah.
That morning, God spoke to my mom and told her that the Jacos were going to be in Newcastle. And it took a while for that to come about. And I remember the morning that your husband called Mom. It was a Monday morning, and just said, I've been pacing the floors all night. And he told my mom that he felt like God wanted him to come to Newcastle. And I remember my mom saying, I knew it from day one.
Yeah, that was, so everywhere we were evangelizing, so everywhere we went for the next 6 weeks, everybody asked us, are you guys going to try out Newcastle? Now, some that are watching this, different religious organizations do this type of thing in a different way.
Yeah.
Some people are like, okay, so we're going to take you from that church and you're going to go pastor at this church. Like they tell their ministers where they're going to go pastor. We don't do it that way. A lot of times you send in a resume. Well, we loved Brother Perry and Sister Perry and Amanda and Natalie so much that we didn't want to appear that we were just somebody else that just wanted to come in. So we waited until the last minute, and we knew that it was time to send in the resume. And I said, please call Sister Perry first because I want her to know our heart. And it was, that next, I believe it was the next Sunday or 2 Sundays later, he preached, and the following week. So it was almost 2 weeks
within a week and a half.
Yeah, from that phone call. And, what's amazing, and we'll get back to the grief part in a second, but what's amazing is that for almost 18 years, my husband has been pastoring here for 17 years now. And so for almost 18 years, Amanda is the music director. Sister Perry is the secretary still. Natalie and Tommy. Tommy is one of my husband's assistant pastors. It has been a beautiful, miraculous thing
process
for the last 17 years. So we're both getting emotional because we share this story. Amanda, it is, her dad, of course, so she's the main one that's going to be talking about it, but it dramatically affected all of our lives. And I'm so thankful for what God has done. And I'm so thankful for your dad. And I remember when we were evangelizing, I would, when I was kind of getting tired of the road, I told my husband, I'm like, can't we just go to Newcastle and sit under Brother Perry for a while, because anytime we saw your mom and dad, they were like home to us.
Right.
So anyway, go ahead.
And I remembered my dad, it wasn't too long before he passed away. He had made the comment to our family one night, I believe it was when we were in revival with you, and your husband, that if the church could afford to have anyone on staff, he would want it to be Jeff and Tracy Jaco.
Oh my goodness.
There was just connections that God was setting up without us knowing before the accident happened. It just goes to prove that God has a plan for everything that we go through in our life.
Yes.
So the day of the accident, our church by the afternoon, the entire church was at the scene. We were all out in a field. We started praying together.
Yeah.
You know, it's just pure devastation.
Yes.
When you lose a parent,
Yeah.
but then when it's when you lose everything all wrapped up in one person,
Right.
to a lot of our saints, you know, he counseled them.
Yes.
Pastors
Yes.
mean a great deal to their
Yes.
saints.
Yes. Yes.
It was hard. I have to be completely honest. You know, I grew up going to church. I grew up thinking that God had his hand on our life. And if I'm going to be 100% transparent, when he passed away, there were a few months where I even questioned if God was real. And that's part of a grieving process.
Yes. So I'm so glad that you're saying that. So that leads me to my next question. What were those next few weeks like? And I appreciate the transparency because, you know, God has big shoulders.
Yeah.
He can handle your questions. He can handle your anger. And it's okay. That is all perfectly normal and a part of the grieving process. So what were the next few weeks like?
They were pure torture.
Yeah.
That's how I can explain it. We ended up having several people come and stay at our house. My grandmother, my best friend, and some of our friends from church for about 6 months.
Wow.
We would just put pallets on the floor because we just could not stand to be alone.
Yeah.
You know, when Dad was our world.
Yes.
And
yes.
anytime our vehicles needed oil change, tires rotated, we didn't even know that it needed done and that it got done.
Right,
He just did it and we didn't know it until we started to have to pay for it. And then we were like, we never had to do this before. We never had this expense.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Oh.
And like when things broke down at the house, it's the little things that you notice. And that's one of the things that we're going to get to in a moment about the grief share class that I just facilitated. You don't know the magnitude of the loss until you start noticing the little things that are missing on top of the grief.
Right.
A lot of times, they've proven this, like with medical, you get brain fog,
Yes.
different things where you just go through a time of memory loss.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a daze and you don't know. And we faced that. We went through that. Some people do have to take medicine. Some people do have to go see a counselor, and none of those things are wrong.
Yes, no,
because we all process grief different ways.
Right.
But it was pretty rough. I remember one night I had got to that point where I was questioning, you know, God, are you even real? How can you take everything away from me? Yeah. I'm going away to study.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm in college. How in the world did you just make my whole world fall apart?
Yeah.
With one accident. And so I was questioning everything.
Yeah.
Everything in my life that was solid, I felt had fallen apart.
Okay.
So
that's good because you are speaking to someone right now who is having that same emotion. What is God doing? And it may not, one thing I want to touch just real quick and then I'll give it back to Amanda.
For sure,
grief is more than just losing a person.
Absolutely.
It can be like grief happens more often than what we realize, actually. You know, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, divorce is a grief. There are so many areas of our lives. And so you may be in a different kind of grief right now, saying, God, what are you doing? But let me reassure you, he knows what he's doing.
Yes, he does.
Faithful,
he does.
And you're never going to get over it. And I hate it when people say, you know, it's time for you to get over it, because it's not something you get over.
It's not.
So go ahead.
It's not something you can get over. And I heard people say, well, it gets easier in time. I don't really agree with that statement. It's never easy to live life without someone that you are so close to.
Right.
You learn how to go through life without him. Yeah. But back to that story, I remember I was laying in bed one night and I had all these questions in my head, and I just yelled out, God, I don't even feel like you're there. I don't feel like you're hearing anything I'm saying. Even though I was going off on him, I felt it was important that he heard me go off on him.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm like,
good.
but are you listening?
Yeah.
it was, just a whirlwind of emotions.
I'm only laughing because I've never heard somebody say, I was going off on God.
I've done that a few times.
But this is good. People need to see this transparency. You were mad.
I was angry in every sense of the word.
It's all right.
And I was laying in my bed and I just said, God, are you even real? Like, I don't feel like you're hearing me.
Yeah.
And it was like a still small voice. Now, obviously, God doesn't speak audibly all the time.
Right.
And I did not hear a voice whisper, but my spirit told me.
Yes.
All it said was Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm laying there and I start to argue again and I feel it again. Like my heart is jumping out of me.
Yes.
And I'm like, Jesus. And as soon as I stopped asking him if he heard me and I just called his name, I cannot tell you, when the Bible talks about the peace that passes all understanding, it was in that moment that God let me know he was there and he heard me.
Yes, yes.
All I had to do was say Jesus.
Yeah.
I didn't have to explain anything.
Right.
I didn't have to yell at him. He knew exactly where I was, and his peace came down and filled my room. And it was in that moment that I realized, okay, God, you're real.
Yeah.
So I'm going to learn about you. Right. And I was raised in a pastor's home. Right. I was dependent on my parents' prayer life. Right. I mean, just being honest, I was dependent on their relationship with God.
That's good.
And it wasn't until I was in that moment that I just felt like God was telling me, you know nothing about me that is what you need. You need to learn about me.
Oh, that's so good.
It was a changing, defining moment in my grief.
Thank you, Jesus.
In my grief. It was, so to answer the question, the first few months was pure torture, mentally, more than anything. Yeah. I would beat myself up over it because one day I'd be mad, one day I'd be sad, and I didn't know what was right or wrong. Right. And it was awesome when I finally understood there is no right or wrong with grief.
Right.
There is no right or wrong with grief.
Right. And just like everything else, we put so much pressure on ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves. And then the enemy loves to bring guilt on top of all of it, on top of all the load that you're already carrying. Right. So it was several years. It has been almost 18 years now. And just in the last few months, you have been ministering through Grief Share.
Yes.
So I'm interested in hearing the process of like, what made you decide I'm ready? I'm ready to help others and to minister in this area.
About 10 years after Dad passed, we're never going to fully understand why we face grief of any kind.
Right.
And like she said, grief is way more than just losing a loved one. Oh, there is grief in ministry.
Oh, yes.
When there's loss of ministry in your life, that brings grief because it was such a major part of you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be anything within a church setting either. When you lose a friend or a relationship or a job, there are so many things. People, when they lose stuff, like when they lose their job and their home gets repossessed or goes back to the bank or their car gets repossessed, that is grief. Right. Because they are grieving something that they worked hard for.
Yes. Well, even like my road of barrenness, that was a grief that like did not have a beginning and like there was no perceivable end. But that was, in my mind, it was, well, not in my mind, but in my heart too, it was a form of grief. So you're right. It's anything that is like even a career. You may be planning for retirement and the bottom has fallen out. That is grief. But I love what Amanda said. She got to the place where she was just honest with God.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time for somebody to get to that place where you're just honest with God and you're like, okay, I'm going through this divorce. I didn't ask for this betrayal. I didn't want this, but God, I feel completely abandoned. Maybe it's time for you to just be honest with the Lord and see what his response is, because I have a feeling his response would be the same.
Yeah.
When we don't know what else to pray, just to speak the name, that's just beautiful.
So back to the question about what made me decide to do it. So as I said, you grieve in all different avenues. Within the last couple years, I'm just going to be transparent on here too.
It's good. That's what we do on,
and
that's what we do on Tracy Jacob Ministries.
Like she said, she went through a season of barrenness. Right now, I am in a season of singleness. And there are many times when I don't understand.
Right.
And it draws me back to grieving over my dad. So over the last couple years, I've really been trying to seek God out for this and finding the true contentment that you hear in the Word.
Right.
And I was just talking to one of our young teenagers' moms a couple weeks ago. I am with young people all the time.
Yes, she is.
Young people, Sunday school kids, it does not matter. They keep me young, and I love it.
And we love her influence on our kids, so it's great.
If I was not in a season of singleness, I could not do that.
That's true.
I could not influence these kids.
Ooh,
I could not work with them weekly,
Yeah.
building up their vocal strength, areas that they can minister in ministry, musically. I could not do that if I was not in this season of singleness.
Right.
And so I was telling this mom, the young girls, we've got like 7 teenagers in our youth group. They have a group message going. And for some reason, they wanted to include me in the group message. So my phone has to stay on silent because we blow up all the time. Easter pictures. What are you going to wear for Easter?
Yeah.
Hey, what are you wearing to church today?
Amanda is coordinating with all the youth girls for Easter. I'm like, I wasn't invited to coordinate
any
with
ladies from the sanctuary want to join us, we're all picking one color, and it's solid color head to toe.
Yeah, Hope's got her dress and shoes, and
she sent me a picture. That's really cute.
Bow picked out.
So, anyways, in the season of singleness, I've had some moments of grief, and when I got to the days that were extremely rough,
it's good.
It recalled to my remembrance the days of my grief over losing my dad. And so I thought, I need to find an avenue where I can process this.
Yes.
And
that's so good.
Last year, I believe it was the end of last year or beginning of last year, Sister Lisa had said she was starting a grief share. And I thought, I'm going to go to that just to see what it's like. Yeah. And I went to a couple classes, and I realized grief is everywhere. It's not just in death.
Right.
So I went to a few of her classes. I didn't go to many, but it was like 3. And the third class that I was in, I was sitting there, and it was, that still smallness again that I had in my room that night.
Right. Oh, wow.
Pricked my heart and told me, you need to lead this. I'm not leading it all the time. It was just, I feel like it was just that one time, maybe more if God answers or opens the door for me, maybe more.
Right.
But it kept coming back to my mind.
Wow.
This is something you need to do.
Oh, that's good.
So
that's good.
I went to Sister Lisa and I said, just in the few classes that I've came to with your grief share, I feel like God is drawing me to this area. And I'm looking into, I want to get some certification in counseling.
Oh, that's
so
wonderful.
Grief share opened that door to me though.
It
was nothing on my own because, I already do a bunch of mentoring and stuff just on the side, to actually do it. And, I wasn't sure, but when I was in grief share, I felt like that's what I need to do. So I'm working on that now.
But awesome.
Lisa had come to me after the first round of grief share was done and asked if I would pray about facilitating the next one. And before she could even finish the sentence of asking me if I would pray, I said, yes, I'll do it. Because I knew that's exactly what God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And if it was for nothing else, I don't want to embarrass her. But if it was for nothing else, it was so my mom could come to the grief share class. She didn't miss one.
Oh,
and it was able to help her too.
Yes. Yes.
It was able to help her realize
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you, Jesus.
Grief can be a beautiful thing.
Oh,
Absolutely beautiful
that is
thing.
so, I was so thankful. I was so thankful when I learned that she was in the class. And if we don't have one in progress right now, but we do offer that here at the sanctuary.
Yes.
They're all over the United States. If you are struggling, listen, for your mom to be in Grief Share, that was 17
and a half years ago.
past. I was in the first couple classes of Grief Share, and the people that showed up, it's not that they had just lost someone. There were many people in that first class that it had been 20 years ago, 25. But then you get in there and you realize, oh my goodness, this is an area that I have just locked away. And I haven't. Sometimes, I know when my mom passed away, I went straight from my mom passing away to my grandpa, her dad, and I think I've shared this before. He got broken heart syndrome because my mom was his baby girl. And so as soon as my mom passed away, my grandpa started having these breathing issues, and I was the only one here in Newcastle to help him. And we went to the doctor. Long story short, he had to have a pacemaker because there literally a electronic connection in his heart failed because of losing my mom. So that is a real thing too. So I went straight from my mom passing away to the care I was having to do for my grandpa, ramped up like you could not believe. And I would do it over again a million times, because if you knew him, my papa was a big teddy bear, and
yes,
I was his girl. But I really didn't have, this sounds crazy, but I really didn't have time to grieve because my attention was needed in so many other places. And so I feel like a lot of people that come to Grief Share, you may be sitting there thinking, oh, that was like 25 years ago. I don't need to talk about that now. You might be really surprised that you really do need to talk about it now. And, a lot of times it's different because, with your situation, it was sudden. With Lisa's mom's passing, it was very sudden. With my mom, it was different. I had been grieving for years because she was sick for a long time. And so everybody grieves in a different way. But Grief Share, we highly recommend it.
Yes, it's wonderful.
That was my next question for you. If you could say something to someone about Grief Share, like to encourage them, what would you say?
I mean, there really is nothing negative to say about Grief Share. It's an opportunity for you to work through the emotions that you don't think anybody else has.
Yeah.
There were several things in the Grief Share classes. It's a course of 13 weeks, so there's several topics that are brought up. Places where you're not alone and you thought you were before.
Right.
Thoughts that in the first week, I remember my mom pointing it out because it spoke to her. Sometimes we hide behind scriptures.
Yeah.
The Lord is my strength, and He will be my song in the midnight hour. And He is. Yeah. He is. But we can't hide behind that and let our hearts continually break.
Yes. Because we feel, especially for those in leadership, you feel like I have to be strong.
Absolutely.
I can't let anybody know that I'm still affected and that I'm, I feel like anybody who has been in any kind of leadership, not even in church leadership,
work, everywhere.
You're the top dog at your office. You feel like you have to go in, put that smile on your face. And I know, because I've done this.
Right.
Put a smile on my face when my heart was tearing apart on the inside. We don't have to do that. Of course, we all know how to behave in public. And so, we're not going to go crazy. But at the same time, it's okay to say, I'm hurting.
Absolutely,
I'm going to have to step away for a second and, gather myself, and I'm hurting right now. And it's okay to say that because we all know you're hurting anyway.
Right. And there is a big difference. Let me just say this. In your heart could be breaking, but your soul could have contentment. And that's where I'm at
that's
right
so
now in my
good.
singleness season
That's
that
so
I've been working
good.
through. Finding that contentment. My soul is content,
Oh, come on,
but my
Amanda.
heart
Woo.
has hard days.
Yes, yeah.
And learning that those are two separate things. God has my soul.
Ooh, that's so
He
good.
has my best interest at heart. Even if my heart in the natural is
Right.
breaking on
Right.
some days,
Right.
there's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
That's beautiful.
If you feel like your heart is breaking, just know God has control of the soul. You can find contentment and true joy within your soul, even though your heart's breaking at the same time.
That's awesome. And this is what I love about having a guest on and just letting the Lord lead our conversations, because this is an episode that we need to have.
And it's a hard topic.
Singleness.
Yes, it's hard.
So if it's okay, I'm going to have Amanda come back. Will you come back and do an episode? We will do an episode on singleness, because you have touched some things today that go all across the board with grief, and with barrenness.
Yeah.
You can, I'm not going to say you have to, you can get to a place where it's exactly what Amanda said. The longing is still there. That God, you complete me. I am fully complete right now where I am in you, because that's what the word says. We are made complete in him. And so thank you for being so transparent. I will put it on the schedule. We will have a lesson about singleness. And if you have something to add to that, or an area that you want us to go to, some questions for Amanda, you can private message me on Messenger, or even put some questions down in the comments below, and we will make sure that we cover that. So anything else you have to add? I
want to add just a short part of a song. Vashawn Mitchell sings a song called Joy. And the Bible doesn't say we're always going to be happy, but the Bible says that we will have joy.
We have joy, right.
He sings the song, and the verse just says, there's beauty in my brokenness. I've got true love instead of pain.
Woo.
There's freedom though you've captured me.
Thank you, Jesus.
I've got joy instead of mourning. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. You give me joy down deep in my soul,
Thank you, Jesus.
down deep in my soul. The Lord can give you joy.
Yes.
In the middle of your grief and your pain.
Yes, that was beautiful.
Oh.
I also want to add that Amanda has a project on on iTunes or
it's
Apple Music.
iTunes, Apple Music. It's any social media platform.
Yeah, tell them again what's the
the title is called It's Over. It's not over.
That's great.
It's not over.
It's not over. Amanda Perry, look for it on iTunes and Apple Music. Thank you so much. What a blessing you have been.
I'm so happy I was able to be on here.
Yes, and we will finally.
Finally.
So we will have Amanda back on, and I'm so, so thankful for your transparency. God is with you. You're not grieving.
Yes.
You're not grieving wrong. We all grieve differently, but having someone to talk to makes such a difference.
It does. It
and
makes
that's
a
why
very
we
big
recommend
difference.
Grief Share. There are all kinds of books on grief, but finding someone that you can just go to and talk to makes such a difference.
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.